Welcome back to Finding My Family. This is Charles. I guess we should start off at the beginning. How I came to be on YouTube and the motivation to start finding my family actually began after I lost my mother in 2015 to stage 4 lung cancer. And I quickly realized that I didn't have anyone else on the planet to answer any kind of family related ancestry or just family heritage questions. Who are we? Where are we? Why aren't we together? So I had been seeing a lot of advertisements for Ancestry.com's DNA test.
Introducing Ancestry DNA, a simple, affordable DNA test that can help uncover your ethnic origins. To learn your ethnic mix, order your DNA kit now at AncestryDNA.com.
And so I thought about it, and still kept seeing ads, and I began to say I should do that. And so I ordered a kit and took the test, waited the 6 to 8 weeks to get the results. They came back, and for the most part, I wasn't really shocked or anything, as I believe it came back at 65% African, 27% European, 5% was Asian, and 2% was indigenous. So I was like, Asian kind of struck me odd because years ago I was in a club and I walked through and paid the cover charge, and the minute I walked through the door, there was a young lady there. Of course, she was drunk out of her mind. And she looked at me and asked me if I was Asian. And I said, yeah, clearly you've had too much to drink. But anyhow, when I saw the results on Ancestry.com being 5% Asian, I was like, oh, well, maybe there's something to that. Maybe she, in her inebriated state, was able to see what I couldn't see or anybody else looking directly at me could see. But 5% Asian was the surprise, along with the 2% indigenous. So like many of us on Ancestry.com, we get the results, we kind of toy around with the hints that they send, and then you tend to let the subscription lapse, and you really don't think too much about it. But every so often I would get an email that had further hints and things of that nature. But just like many of us on Ancestry.com, I let the subscription lapse, and it's like, okay, well, I know for the most part what my Ancestry DNA says that I am. But it wasn't until the pandemic in 2020 where I had time to sit at home because the world shut down, and had time to sit at home and just kind of fill my days with different things beyond work and just the normal day-to-day living. So I found a gentleman on YouTube by the name of Dane Calloway. And Dane Calloway presented I don't want to call it a theory. I mean, he was presenting facts and speaking to it and challenging his audience to, don't take his word for it, write it down, and you go research this, and you go research your family and see if what I'm saying isn't true and factual. And in this particular podcast or live stream, I think it was, he said, if you are from Africa, just name one African relative. And I was like, I can't do it. My parents have never spoken to any African relatives, no names, no memories, nothing passed along. And anyone who knows Dane Calloway's channel knows that his fact-based theory is that the slave story we got through our compulsory education was entirely told incorrectly. And there are many lies and half-truths and twisted truths. So with that, the only person that I knew who was a cousin of mine, actually there were two, because I met one of my mother's sisters as a child that I can remember, and that would have been my Aunt Margaret. And she had a son named my cousin Cliff. And going through the death process with my mother, I was introduced to a cousin, Barbara. And Barbara was out there in New York, from what I understood. And so the only person I could reach out to and call was my cousin, Barbara. And I posed the same question to her that Dane Calloway posed. Who do we know and who can we name that is from Africa? And at the time I shared with her, I know that, we were told we were and have African roots, but I don't recall anyone, meaning my mother or my father, speaking to anything of African roots or names of family members from Africa. So I asked her, do we know anyone's name, just one name of an African relative or ancestor? And she, of course, same thing, didn't know of any, and said she was going to make some phone calls. And following up, between myself and my cousin Barbara, we didn't know anybody from Africa. So I began to get back on Ancestry.com and look through the census records, as Dane Calloway had, given us the advice to do that. And sure enough, just as he stated, is just what I found. I found the beginnings of a family, and as it expanded through the census record, I saw where the names or the labels were changed from mulatto to Negro to black. And as you all know now, we're supposed to adopt the label of African American, but thanks to Dane Calloway, I'm also questioning all of that. But in my search, as I began to develop my family tree, I'm seeing things that aren't adding up. And the big question is, why with my hue of complexion? Number one, why am I being called black when my skin color is the hue of brown? I mean, I have a black car. I enjoy wearing black clothing because black is my favorite color, but my skin is brown. So why do we call things out of their name? And most importantly, why don't educated people open their minds and say the same thing. Why are we calling things that are brown black? And my further thought is, wow, this is the most ignorant thing ever, right? Because honestly, I've never met a black person. I've never met anybody with the hue of complexion of the skin color black. I've only met people that have varying shades of the color brown. And when you get into that deeper, you'll understand why there's such a difference between the color brown and black, as well as the legal ramifications and implementations of that word in legalese. So, let's see. So I jump into all the census as I begin finding relatives who were, obviously now deceased. And again, I'm seeing the race labels changed over time. And I'm not seeing that for other demographics of people. White people have always been white. They've never been any other name, white or Caucasian. They've not had, 4 or 5 different changes to their race label. It's either, I think from what I remember, all I see in the census is just W for white. But questioning all of that, we began to, listen more to Dane Calloway, write down the questions that he asked and research them. But as I began, I started building out my family tree. And what I started with was what I knew. I knew my mother and my father's names. I knew their children. And I say it that way for a reason, which we'll get into that at some episode later on in the future. But that's where I started. And then after, again, reading my mother's memoirs, I knew I had an Aunt Margaret and a cousin Cliff. And now I knew I had a cousin Barbara. So I added them to the mix of things, and sure enough, the ancestry tree began to open up with more hints and notifications of such. And I did this for a while, and it wasn't actually until this past year of 2025, I would say in the month either late June or early July, that I found a cousin Caprice, and she was listed as my second cousin. And so let me see, did she email me or did I email her first? But we sent a message and began to correspond that way through the Ancestry.com platform. And then we exchanged phone numbers and had a conversation. And I don't know, me and Caprice are like, it felt like family. It felt like this was long overdue. And I can only tell you that we pretty much talk every day. It's become a daily routine to talk to my cousin Caprice and my 2 younger cousins, Lily Green and Soraya Green. So within our conversation between me and Caprice, we exchanged information on, what we knew about the Bailey family, and with understanding that her grandmother was Grace Bailey Sims, or Grace Sims Bailey, and her father, Caprice's father, was Charles Sims. So Charles Sims would have been my first cousin, and Grace Sims Bailey would have been my aunt, making Caprice my second cousin, and her children, I believe, my third cousins. That would be Lily, Green, and Soraya. And so discussing the names and everything that I found in my mother's memoirs, and being able to put together this tree as you see it currently. As my mother did mention, she had, I think she was the youngest of either 13 or 14, or she was the 13th child. I'm not too sure, but yeah, it was a lot of information and a lot of things that I experienced in my life's journey with my mother's daughter, or my mother and father's daughter, and my father's two daughters. Actually, Caprice is currently going through that with her sister, and we'll get into all that in later episodes. It's quite eye-opening and fascinating, I guess is the word one would use when it comes to dealing with families that are dealing with families that are dysfunctional in nature. Yeah, it's something else. But yeah, we shared all of those things and more as you will all get to see and hear in future episodes. But yeah, finding Caprice is definitely a blessing. We joke a lot, and her daughters definitely bring entertainment. Yeah, it's great to finally find someone in your family that you can have conversations with on the regular. So I want to say the next episode, I'm going to invite Caprice on, and we will have a conversation and bring you all up to speed on where we're at. So with that, I would like to say thank you for tuning in to Finding My Family, the Baileys, as our journey continues through finding out all of the information and a lot of big questions and mysteries and shockers within one's own family, along with a very big question, do we have any African roots? Are we actually African, or is Dane Calloway absolutely correct in making the statement that we're not from Africa and we are indigenous to this land, now called America, previously called Turtle Island, and that we are truly the indigenous people of this land, otherwise known as Indians?